and today we will talk more about Slovakia, Hungary, and their relations with Ukraine with an international relations expert, Maxym Yali. Greetings, Mr. Maxym.
Hello.
Hello. We are very glad to see you in our studio, and today we would like to talk about the visit of Prime Minister Fico, Prime Minister of Slovakia, to Ukraine, and his conversation with Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal. We have heard extreme claims and statements from Robert Fico that he will block Ukraine's access into NATO accession, and he is going to restore normal cooperation with Russia as soon as it is possible. How do you think why those statements are made?
Well, actually, nothing new, at least for experts. And we should take into account that Mr. Fico makes such statements addressing not towards Ukraine or Ukrainian prime minister and people in general, but towards his own audience in Slovakia, to his voters. Actually, he repeats the statements and the slogans of his campaign during parliamentary elections, after which he became Prime Minister of Slovakia. But when it comes to real deal, to real talk and meetings on top level with Ukrainian officials, his position changes and statements are much smoother. It was the last time, and I'm sure it will be this time as well after the meeting is over. So we should take into account this political issue, and as I have already mentioned, that we should not take it too seriously, because one thing is public sphere, statements which are made for political reasons, and another matter when it comes to real negotiations, especially taking into account that Ukraine has serious leverages of influence on Slovakia, particularly in energy sphere, because all the gas, almost all the gas which Slovakia imports comes from Russia and through Ukrainian territory. And definitely it's going to be the basic and topic number one of their negotiations.
Okay, and Slovakia and Hungary are Ukraine's neighbors. So these countries have long history with our country, and maybe you can tell us a little bit what is the case with Orban and Fico. Why are they called friends of Putin of Europe in Europe, and why they are lobbying Russian interests so much and are in conflict with Brussels, for example?
Well, it's all about national interest and the way the leaders are considering this national interest, and it's all about economy. As you have mentioned, Hungary as well, yes, not only Mr. Fico, but also Prime Minister of Hungary, Mr. Orban, makes such statements, and even comes further. He is blocking, for example, cooperation between Ukraine and NATO. He blocks he doesn't allow weapons from the West come through the territory of Hungary to Ukraine, and many others. So it's all about gas, I would say, what unites them, and oil, on which they are totally dependent on Russia. More than 70% of gas and oil comes from our enemy to these countries for very cheap prices, if to compare with European prices and gases from other states. And definitely they should pay back, and usually Kremlin is ready to pay a lot, give discounts to the countries which are helping them to avoid, for example, sanctions in this sphere. Also, Hungary is helping them, or also just for political reasons. By the way, actually, using gas as a geopolitical tool, familiar also towards Ukraine. Let's recall President Yanukovych, who prolonged the agreement concerning Russian fleet in Crimea for 25 years in 2010, just for a 30% discount for Russian gas. So it's just the same policy, nothing changes, and therefore they are using it to all their, not only neighbors, but all their partners, especially in Europe, using the weak points of the mechanisms of the European Union and NATO, where all decisions are made with the help of consensus. It means that all the member states should agree with this or that decision. And therefore, it's very, I would say, easy to bribe a small state, a small economy. If we talk about Slovakia and Hungary in comparison, for example, with France, Italy, not talking about Germany, yes, and to give them discounts for their gas, petrol, and oil, and for the leaders of that countries to make such statements concerning European and especially Euro-Atlantic integration of Ukraine.
Well, that's a very good example. We also have the example of Croatia and Slovenia, both small countries in the European Union that have little ties to Russian energy resources, and though we have like zero problems with them related to European integration and NATO integration of Ukraine. So probably the tides will change and we will see European Union's answer to that. So abstracting from the consensus principle, maybe in the near future we can see those processes going on. What do you think?
First of all, concerning your examples, Croatia or Slovenia. Croatia and Slovenia are much closer to us because they had their own war with Imperial Serbia, and fighting for their independence. So therefore, they perfectly understand what it means, imperial ambitions of the leaders and the war for independence. That's why they're assisting us and giving us also financial, military assistance as much as they can. And another case, though, for example, Hungary and Slovakia were also in the sphere of geopolitical interests of USSR. And for example, if we talk about Hungary, 1956, when Soviet tanks came into Budapest. But unfortunately, human memory is pretty short, and the generations mostly already passed away. And these historical lessons, as we see, are not learned well. Unlike, for example, Czech Republic, and the president of it supports Ukraine and gives just alternative statements and is helping us to supply shells, etc. But as for further perspective, I'm sure the answers and the decisions will be found, especially taking into account the dependence of these states on the European budget, because they are not donors, but vice versa. They are paid from European budget, which is fulfilled with such economies as Germany, France, Netherlands, Austria, so rich countries. And of course, there are leverages on them, just as it was shown, for example, when there was a decision made and voted to give the credit for 50 billion euros for military and financial assistance to Ukraine this winter, when there was found such a mechanism when Mr. Orban, who was blocking that decision, the only country, just left the room when the voting process was made, so that he could say to Mr. Putin, you see, I did everything I could, but at the same time, the decision was made and solved under the pressure of Germany, by the way. So I suppose when time comes, the mechanism will be found. Besides, there are discussions now in Europe and in NATO as well. First of all, in Europe, that to avoid such, I would say, when small countries can block and blackmail other countries when voting for a serious decision. It means that to change the mechanism when the decisions are made with the help of consensus principles to majority decision. So I suppose these discussions will go on, and taking into account the factors I have already mentioned, the decisions will be found.
Well, that's a lot to think about, and I hope that we will really find a decision to diplomacy with our neighbors and partners, Slovakia and Hungary. Thank you, Maxym. That seems to be it for now. Thank you.